Okay, what I want to do now is add a search capability to our list. This is another application that if you weren't so engrossed in your Lions camp, you might end up doing this donors and donations form, which reminds me on March 18th, there's a blood drive here. And not that many of you care about it, but I'll give you another SQL card, NQA card. I'll give you another NQA card if you can donate or at least try. That's the 18th. But what I want to do is create this kind of a thing so that we can filter our data. And notice this is a little beyond what I want to do here, but it might be something where it actually will be something we're going to want to do in Lions. So we'll probably discuss that as well. So that and I'll make this available to you a little later so you can steal it. But notice this is basically the same kind of form. We click on people, we go to their details, but what we can do in here is say, I want to search for people whose last name starts with Cruz. Search. And it just filters that list down. Now what's really happening here, just so you know, what's really happening is when I hit search, goes back to the server, so he doesn't want everybody. He only wants people whose last name is like Cruz. It regenerates the list, sends it back. And then if I wipe it out and search, then I get everybody again. But every time I do that, it's going back to the server and regenerating. And if I say, give me all of them, I don't know if that one's working. Maybe this is all, not sure. Search. And it looks like I got a few more, but it's kind of goofy that I got to click on search to make it happen. I could have made an on-click event for my radio button so that when any one of those changed, it automatically sent. So let's take a look at the code that's behind the scenes on that. And I don't know if you noticed it coming in. There was a login screen as well. Maybe. Oh, because I'm logged in. I'm sorry. It's not going to make me log in again. Because I'm already logged in, it's not making me log in. This app does not have a log out, so it can't demonstrate that.
Is it saved in your cookies?
Yeah, I'd have to go clear out my cookies, and I don't need to do that right now because we don't need to see a login screen for the main program. I'll be taking care of that anyways. All right, so yeah, you can go away. Yeah, way too many things going here. Where's brackets? Here's brackets, and I've already brought in the red cross complete. And so down here is where I'm generating the list, nothing new. Okay, the only thing that's different here is notice I don't have paragraph tags around it. Instead of each one of my names in a paragraph, I just break after each one, that way they're single spaced. All kinds of ways you can do that. So here's the stuff that's at the top of that form that we were looking at. Please select a donor from the list below, that's good. But then there's the search options. And notice it's embedded inside of a form. So that's a form. And underneath is another form that allows me to create a new donor. And then there's a submit button, I forget what, oh, this is the input, okay, that's hidden. And then there's just a button on that form that says new donor. So it's a different form, it has a different effect with a different action. This form also has an action that says take me back to the donors list. I am in the donors list. Yes, but now there's a search variable that is incorporated because there is a text field that allows me to grab that, and maybe we should change the IDs. Let's not mess with it here. We'll change it in ours. Okay. There's basically a text field with a placeholder that says enter some text to search for, and then when we submit this form, we can get out, we won't put the radio buttons in for just now, but when we submit this form, it submits it with the search variable, and it goes back. And so what we'll need to do in the cases file, and we can look at it here real quick, if it's in, it might just be in the index file here. It doesn't look like I have cases in this version. Nope. So if you look at the index file, action donor list, we check to see if the search variable is available. Why are there two? This one, I maybe will get to it today. Okay. This one is a session variable, which is how we have another layer of variables that you can save between sessions or within your session between page instances. So when you're going from one page to another, to another, to another, the session is an array. It's a super global array that is basically your cookies. You get to name them. So I've named a session variable called donor search. And what my code does is checks to see if there's a session variable. If it is, it remembers it. And then it checks to see if there's a donor search in the request array. If it does, it overrides the session variable because I just came from that page. Here's how I'm doing radio buttons. And then I generate the list, but the session variable, this says if it's not set, set it to the empty string. Interesting. This get donor list is going to look at that session variable and say, is there anything inside? The other alternative to doing this is we assign this to a variable and then we send the variable in to get donor list as a filter. I think we'll do that today as a starter. So that's kind of the process. We put a little bitty form at the top. So I'm going to switch back to the view. And I'm going to steal this form and rip out the stuff that I don't want. And let's go back to single view for a little while. And you're not who I need. I want my detail, no, list view. So here's my list view. There's the please select employees. Here's the loop. Now we got two pleases, so you go away. And this whole thing here looks like it can indent. Still need a submit button. It's going to images search. I wonder if I even have an images search in here. I do not, so we'll have to remember, well, we'll just get a dumb looking button. I'll put the image in there in a little while. You just need to copy it over there from, well, I guess I can do that real quick. Red cross complete. Images, unlock, save, search. I should just grab all of those for right now. Okay, some are GIFs, some are PNGs. Search is just a GIF, never converted it, so I'll have to do that a little bit later. So we'll just remember that it's a GIF, and that's what this says anyways. Then so here's the button. It's got the word search on it, and it's first. I don't know if that's a better idea or to have the text box first and then the button. This kind of labels my text box right away, so it serves two purposes. It's up to you. Input type equals text, that sounds good. Name equals donor search. We don't like prefixes anymore, so this just becomes search. Size 25 with a placeholder. Value equals the session variable. I think when we first hit this page, the value has to be, this is going to be temporary request. So that the main reason, well, let's see, do I want to do that? If we leave this out and just make it the empty string, what we would get is a search box with a limited list, but a search box at the top nonetheless that's empty. So what I'm trying to do here is communicate the most recent search value back again. And that should work here as long as I remember to call it donor search. Oh, wait a minute, name's changed. Search. Let's go with donor search. The reason I'm doing that is in the future we might be searching for different kinds of things. We need to have different names for them. We're doing for a donation search, a camper search, a camp search. Each of those gets its own variable in the sessions array so that you can remember them from one form to the next. So it's good to keep them separated, so we'll call it donor search. Where did I get employee list from?
Are you still doing this in the employees?
This is employees now, yes. The employee list comes from my cases file. You're talking
No,
about,
I'm looking in your Red Cross. Sorry. I'm looking in your Red Cross folder.
you want me to switch back? Because I'm not in Red Cross, I'm back to employees. I stole the code from Red Cross and I'm back into employees again.
Yep, I got that now.
Okay. Oh, you're telling me you were confused. Okay. So hidden variable, and so really this is my mini search here. Let's see how it goes. Just to see it display. Save it. Let's come back over here and go to done. And there's my, oops, not good. There's my search box, got some junk in it, so we have to be careful because there is, I think it's giving me an error on this. There is no donor search variable. So I'm going to go back to my cases real quick, and maybe now would be a good time to split. And I want to see the cases. Let's move them down to the bottom. So here's my cases, and I now want to see my list view. Here's my list view. Before I can display the list, I need to define a search variable, donor search. Actually, that's in the request array, so that may not be so good. Let's try, what was in there before? That was the, okay, let's try this. Donor search equals field value, that's my fancy dancy function from the request array of donor search. So this says go to the request array, see if it exists. If it does, see if there's a search variable, donor search variable. Why do I want donor search? This is going to be employee list. Got way too much donor stuff here. Search, employees, EMP search, EMP search, EMP search. Okay, if there's an EMP search variable, put it into this EMP search. I think I'm going to send that in here. I had a little different technique from last year. EMP search. I'm going to send it in. Again, we might back off of that once we get our session variables and just say, give me the session variable. EMP search goes into here. So now this should be cool. This is the form, should be ready to go. Now we come into here, but we still need to modify get employees list to use this search. So here's my views, employee list. Thank you, employees. There's my employee details, and here's my get employee list. And here I'm going to call the variable filter.
Did I give it an optional value?
And now I have to give it a parameter. No, I don't have to give it optional. I can say looks like this with two things around it. As long as things are around it and there's nothing in between, give me anything followed by anything gives me all of them. So I don't need it to be optional necessarily. I could, but every time I call field or get employee list, I'm going to be sending it in something. This has already made it unoptional, right? Made it into an empty string. But I want to use this filter in here. So now I'm going to steal some code because my brain is just not really good today. And here's my binding value. Copy that binding value into my list. before I execute. Somewhere in here I need my filter. And I'm filtering by name. And in a where clause, I can't use the name, right? So I have to repeat the darn equation. Actually, I don't even need the comma. I can just say concatenate these two things. I don't imagine, well, let's stop here for a second. When we're searching, is there a possibility that the user will type the comma to get the, yeah, that might happen. If they type the comma to say Gall, comma V, instead of Gall, comma T, comma what, to filter the list even more, if they type the comma and we don't have it in there, we'll find it. So I want to search my first name like, and now here things get hairy. I remember this in my notes. So going back to my notes. And darn, I want to keep that page. So back to my different set of notes. Web Data Management, Unit 6. How do I do a like clause and parameterize queries? Using parameter queries. This is invalid. Because there's a parameter inside there, we can't do that. Will not work. Seems logical. Put the percent signs around it, put the thing you're searching for in between, it should just plug that in. Doesn't work. So what we have to do instead is concatenate our parameter value to percent signs and then stick that in after the like. Boy, this was one of those, thank God for Google. All right, so there's my like statement.
So you have to end your first concat, and parenthesis.
I did, didn't I? Oh, yes. Like. And now I'm going to do another concat of a percent sign. Let's see. I got to put quotes around it because I got single quotes around the outside. Followed by my variable, which I called filter. Followed by another percent sign. Order by last name.
So now if you type in Volker Gall, that's not going to find anything.
Correct. There's limits. Right? But if you type Volker, it'll find it. If you type KER, it'll find it because of the way I'm searching here. Okay. Now, hopefully my user is smart enough to look at the list and say, oh, they're all in last name, first name order, so maybe that's why they're not finding Volker Gall. But if you want that flexibility, you write it. This gives me enough flexibility to say it's in the field someplace.
It'd be a lot of or statements.
It'd be a lot of stuff. This lets me find it anywhere in the field. Some people prefer to search on starting at the beginning. Piece of cake, take that one out. And so if you're looking for cities and you don't expect people to be typing POI or point so that it can find it at the end, the beginning, the middle, if you want them to find it at the middle, just take the 1% sign. But I like this. Other things I like to do is put in an or clause. So if I have multiple fields that I'm searching, if this matches or this matches in my grad survey, my customer said, sometimes I have my 8-digit student ID number and sometimes I have the person's name. Can you give me a search box that does either one? Yeah. So what I did was an or here. If the student name contains what's in the search box, or the student ID, which is a completely different format, contains what's in the search box, then go get it. So you can have lots of flexibility here. And if we were doing the radio buttons, inactive, all, etc., you stick an and on here. And it's what's in the search box and they're active, then include them. So that's how you do multiples, and up to I've done 3 at times. 3 different filter criteria all at the same time, and the user can go crazy with it. But this usually gives them, particularly for a list, gives them as much information as they need. Then down here I have another, I stole it, so this is going to be the filter is equal to my filter variable. So we can't SQL inject into that mess. And this is a place where we could have SQL injection because the user is actually typing in that search box. And if they're one of those SQL hacker guys, they might know stuff in there, might be able to glean information from some of your question marks to see what field names are in the databases, find some ID names. This prevents all that. So this still returns the same kind of stuff, it just should now be filtered. We get back here, we say, is there a request variable for that? If there is, then use it. I think we might be pretty close here. What am I missing? Let's be brave. What? Where did those come from? Oh, I copied the logo over from the other one into this one. Duh. Okay, I got my little guy here. This is still bad. Undefined, what's your problem? Undefined index emp search. $emp search, emp search. But I thought, didn't I save this page? Let's do a file, save all, and try again. My form is coming up. So actually, emp search is here. It's my form that's complaining, I think. So let's go into the view. None of these have the view. No, list view. List view. And this should simply be, where am I? I'm in the view. So I have my emp search variable available, so I'm just going to put that in there. See, the emp search variable is right here, which makes it available to the view. I think that's what it's complaining about, because this field value, if it's not initially defined, the field value got hit, but then in here I'm still saying, give me what's in request, and there's nothing in there. So that's where that error is coming from. There we go. Okay, my icon here is making this a little out of alignment, but with a little bit of SQ or a little bit of CSS, we could fix that. So once again, let's look for anybody whose name has a TAM in it someplace. See at least 2 Tammys here. Go. Not bad. The other thing to then, and notice the TAM is still here. It looks like it's still there. Remember we left and we came back. Right? So when we left, request array had TAM in it. TAM then got plugged right back into the search. So as we go from one to the other, everything works really well. I want to check to make sure that it lets me out. Give me everybody, looks like it. And now the piece that's missing is if I click on one of these, and then go back, it's gone. As long as I'm going list view to list view, list view to list view, it retains the search criteria. But as soon as I leave this page, that other page didn't have it anymore, and my search variable is gone. Now, before I leave that, there's one other thing I wanted to show you. Do I really want to do that now? Yeah, I promised it to you. Our cancel button, if I make changes to the form, does not warn me. Okay? Our cancel button doesn't warn me. So if I come over here and make some changes to somebody, and then say take me back to the list, I don't get any warning saying, hey, you didn't save your changes. Now in my own personal forms, I don't want that. I leave it out. But if we wanted to check to see before we leave, did they make any changes? And ask them on the way out. You saw the code here. The code is a little bit of jQuery, and it's stuck into a verify cancel function. So the jQuery says, in this form that I have, is it dirty? If it is, then, and this has class dirty, where'd the class dirty come from? That's built by Are You Sure? If it's dirty, then see if they really want to leave. And if they say no, let them stay. So I did plug that in. That went into the JavaScript for my employees. So this is running. This cancel button was turned off. There is a verify cancel function already in there. So I'll bring that back. And then near the end somewhere is verify delete, and here verify cancel. And this is JavaScript, so I can't do this in JavaScript, can I? I was wondering why it wasn't letting me move to the next line. JavaScript doesn't let you do that. I could concatenate two strings. We'll just leave it. This isn't PHP, is it? No, JavaScript. If form details, is that the name of my form? Would be a good thing to know. Views, details, form details, good. Back to the JavaScript. If form details is dirty, then check to see, and then we return the yes, no. If the yes is designated that are you sure you want to leave? I say yes, then that verifies the cancel. If I say no, it's like canceling the button. So with any luck, that'll work. Plus, come in here, put some junk in. Didn't do anything, so I thought that would work. Guess I'll have to play with that a little bit more. But that's the concept. Find out what's wrong. There might be a JavaScript error. I'll figure it out. So I got to clean that up. Okay, so my search seems to be working, but now what I want to do is go back to my notes, and that would be Unit 6, 7. I'm going to jump into the Unit 7 notes and start introducing you to session variables. I think this might save you some grief when you're working on Lions Camp, to know what these things are. And we'll plug them in here to help us remember our search categories so that when we leave the search, go to the details and come back, the search variable that we had before is still there. Always have the option of wiping it back out again, but at least it's still there if that's what we choose to do. So session variables are like super global. They are super global variables. They have the name $_session. Each session variable name is used as the key, so we get to define our own session variables. You saw that I had donor search as my session variable. Then you also give it a value. These are extra super global, that's my term, because they retain their values even after you leave the website. You saw I had problems. I couldn't log back into the Red Cross page because it remembered me and said, oh, you were here a minute ago. Session variables have a life, a lifetime that we get to control. So if you want session variables to have a 3-second lifetime, you can. As soon as the user leaves the page, if they come right back, they're in. If they check the news for 3 seconds or 5 minutes and come back, then they have to log back in again. Session variables are stored in a cookie that is saved on the user's computer until your program deletes it or it times out. Your program can delete them. We often do when the user says log out, is delete the session variables, or at least the single session variable for the login name, so that when they log out, that session variable is deleted and we don't have to worry about it. The other alternative is to timeout. If the users have cookies turned off, session variables don't work. So here we go again. If there's no session variable, that's not that big a deal. Come back to the search page and all my search stuff is gone. Then my first question to the user is, do you have your cookies turned on? Oh no, I hate cookies. Well, then that's why.
See, what I read is it said the session variables were saved on the server. And they had by default 20-minute life after the session ended.
Hey, you might be right. I'm not going to argue with you. But I have been able to find these in the cookies and remove them. So you're saying they're stored in both? If there's no JavaScript, they're stored in the server?
And that might be.
And there might be two kinds of session variables for all I know. One that's stored in the server and one that's stored local. Because you can find these session variables, and I haven't done it in Chrome, so I'm out on a limb here. I'm not ready to talk about Unit 7, but I'm doing it.
Show you where they are.
You know where they are? Okay. They're there, and you can go wipe them out, so that if I wanted to, I could go wipe out my red cross cookie. And when I do, I'll be pushed back to login again. So the fact it's stored on the server seems a little odd. There might be a shared piece of information there someplace. Maybe the variables on the server, but the session array I would believe is on the server, but the data has to be in a local machine. Otherwise, it seems to be a little confused. Local machine is where I think of them. You must instruct your website to use session variables. They are not on by default, they are off. So normally in the controller, maybe in the connect file, I think this is where I've been doing it, you set the cookie's lifetime. But notice the lifetime is for the cookie. So all of your session variables have the same lifetime. It's not like you can get rid of, like you can say one is going to have a 30-second lifetime, another one's going to have a different lifetime. They all have the same lifetime. So you session set cookie parameters lifetime, and then that's just where it gets stored, default location, and then start your session. So these three lines start in, let's put them in the connection string. Let's see if I can steal them. So I'm going to go to the connections model, and everything works out. We try to do this. If all of that works, then I'll set my lifetimes and session variables. This is 60 seconds times 60 minutes. So if I just do 60 here, I should get 1 minute, right? That might be a little limiting. I think the cookie will stay alive as long as it might go away just because you're not looking at it while you're staring at a page for 1 minute. The cookie could go away. I'm not
See,
sure.
what I read is it's when your session ends.
When your session
Close the
ends.
browser, the timer starts.
Okay. So my session ends when I close the browser, is what you're saying. So this 60 seconds should be okay. And if we want more, we can always do more. So that should give us the ability to define and use the session array. Using session variables to remember a search string. In the last unit, yeah, that's what we're doing. Now, in the case file, I can check to see if the session variable is set. If it is, then use it. Otherwise, use the empty string. Now, we saw my logic before. The problem with this logic is that the session variable would always override the form variable. So you need both. So I'm going to steal that logic. I think that's kind of what this is doing. Is set request, is set search. There's only one is set there. That's what bothers me about this one. These might be chained. So I'm going to go back to Red Cross because it had a technique that I used last year. I think it was pretty good. So in Red Cross, was it in the controller? Okay, there's those, oh, it's in the action. Here's the list. If it's set, use it. Let's cut that. And notice it's in my list case. It's done before everything else. And I might be able to shorten this a little bit. Yeah, I should be able to. Well, let's copy it over there to start with, and then we'll go from there. So going back here, and I'm going into my cases. Before I display my variables, I'm going to put it here. I want to check to see if the session variable is set. If it's not set, this sets it to the empty string. Well, that's my field value, right? And so I should be able to use field value, but instead of looking in the search array, I'm going to look in the session array. But I need to look in both. And so the first question is always the search array, or the session array. Is there a field value for the session for employee search? If there is, then use it. Otherwise, use the empty string.
No, otherwise use the,
Request array if it exists. So this is kind of what I was leaning toward. Can I do this? Where I say otherwise use the field value of the requester. No, this can't be the other way. We have to flip it around because the request array is primary.
yeah,
Okay, so let me just type it in here and I'll flip them around. If the session variable has a search, use it. Otherwise, this is request. If the request array has an employee search value, use it. Otherwise, if the session variable is set, use it. Otherwise, use the empty string. That's what that says, I think.
mhm.
So this is new. My new and improved short version now gives me an employee search string.
And now you have to set the session variable.
That's what's missing here. That's what the other logic did that I don't have here. So I might have to backtrack. Did I cut and paste? What happened? Okay. Notice this does two things. This says if there's a session variable, use it. But it also says for the request array, if there is no session, if there is, let's see, if this is set, then if is set request array, then set the session array equal to it. That's the part I'm missing. Okay, this part I think I can do with my field value, but this I can't do with the field value because this doesn't change the session variable.
So instead of doing employee search equals it, do the session variable equals it. And just use the session
And then
variable.
use the session variable back inside there again, which is what I was doing before.
Yeah,
Okay. So here's what he's saying. I'm going to set the search variable. It's either going to be equal to my request array or the current search variable or the empty string. Now the current search variable putting into the search variable or session variable seems kind of redundant. Doesn't it? But it's still shorter than this. Here's this version. That says session search is equal to session search. Well, this does it anyways. Oh no, this only does it if it's not set. If it's not set, then set it to the empty string. and then check to see if there's a request array. If there is, put it in a request variable, otherwise put it in there. This will do it. So let's just document the hell out of it and we'll be okay. And let's keep that just in case.
Scoot over a little.
No. And what you're missing out the end there is just a close tick, a couple parentheses, and a semicolon. But none of this is tested.
It's gonna work.
It's going to work.
Mhm.
Green said it's good, so we're at. Okay, back to my test then, since you're also confident. I'm glad. Let's refresh this page. Whoa, undefined variable emp search. Oh, forgot to change the view. Nope, list view. And this emp search now becomes a session array for emp search.
I think you have to do mapping your cases statement.
I have to do what?
Mapping your cases file. Again,
In the function.
I thought I did change the cases file. Oh, here I don't send anything in. Thank you. Because the session variable is super global, and I just put that into my form. So the session variable is available to me inside there. So I don't have to send anything in anymore, but then I should probably go in there and take out the parameter.
How's it gonna work if you don't send in the parameter?
It'll still
This
work.
is the session variable.
That's the.
Instead of using.
Also, I have to do the session variable here too.
Yeah.
Shoo, do I like that?
So you don't need the parameter at all.
Yes?
Yep.
We're back. Now here's the big kick. Check for TAM. Cool. By the way, I pressed enter because that's the submit button. That's cool as long as there's only one. When there's multiple submits, I don't know what it does. And again, later we might have a new button here. Now if I go to look at Tammy Bar, I did get Tammy Bar, but when I go back to the list, if all is well, I should still be filtered by TAM. And since things are working, I'm quitting. Plus it's time. So that's a good start. So you got some introductions there. That session variable that I just introduced you to in Lions, I see that as the camper ID. They pick a camper ID in that session variable. That camper ID flows through everywhere because we want the guardians who are associated with this ID. We want the addresses, not necessarily. We want the registrations that are associated with this ID. Every single page is probably going to display the camper's name so we know who we're talking about. And so the camper's name could also be a session variable so that you don't have to go get it out of the database for every bloomin' form, just so you can display it at the top. Make the ID and the camper names both session variables, set them. Whenever whoever's got the list, you set the session variables and go from there. And everybody else has access to those session variables. Let's pick a name like camper ID and camper capital name, right? Everybody knows they're going to be there, and you can, in the meantime, while you're testing in the controller or in the index file, say session camper ID equals 1010101, camper name equals Justin Walk, or Walk comma Justin, and go merrily on your way and test your form until you link to the camper list. Okay. So let's take 10. We come back. This team over here is first, and then those guys over there, and then you guys in the back, right? Just show us your status. There's nothing, one of the things you have to learn, I guess it's time to